But we do have to be concerned, because when a child sits down at their computer for the first time and they have a blank page, they're going to tend to want to do what's most fun. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast. So it might be, well, I want to listen to some music. So, okay, and we're going to try and listen to some music. And meanwhile, oh yeah, hockey. There's a hockey game on. Okay. Oh yeah. So I'm going to try and concentrate, listen to some music, watch the hockey game, while I'm trying to write my English essay. Oh, but wait a second. My buddies have signed on to Call of Duty, and they say, hey, you want to play a game? Listen, we're hanging out, man. Come on, join us. And so they're out there playing Call of Duty. And for those of you who haven't been exposed to a massively multiplayer online role-playing game before, it's an incredibly compelling game. As you were saying, it activates all parts of the limbic system. This is, oh, somebody's smiling up there. He plays. You play? No? You do COD? Oh, yeah. Okay, and it is a blast, isn't it?
Yeah, he was pointing out some strategy.
It's true. As Heather pointed out, oddly enough, and I've certainly observed it, in these kind of role-playing games, which have high intensity, high impact, high risk and reward, I've seen incredible multitasking in kids, but it's of a very specific type. Very handy for people who might be controlling UAVs in the US military. If you've got a UAV on a task mission and you need to bomb somebody and you have to react quickly, that's very handy. Not great for writing essays, though, is it? You're pretty jangled. Now imagine, though, your child's, meanwhile, what was he sitting down there? Oh, yeah, he was going to write an essay. So it's a real challenge, and one that it's like putting the cookie jar on the table and the chocolate bowl and the candy, and then putting in front of that candy bar, that collection of food, you've got the work notes. Oh, by the way, get down to work. And meanwhile, everything you want to have is right there with you. So I'm going to very quickly just remind ourselves about what multitasking.
Let's talk about multitasking. As you surely know, kids do a lot of it. In fact, a recent survey indicated that kids spend 7.5 hours each day using electronic devices.
Ooh, my, that's a lot. And you can imagine your brain is constantly skipping from one thing to another, and it's lots of fun. You get bored with this, you can do that. You get bored with that, you can do this. Now, what does he actually have to say about multitasking? Well, let's see.
And some stuff.
We'll just move ahead a little.
Costs you something on the first tap.
We'll
you to multitask.
Okay.
They're both equally good at it. Most important, when your brain is doing something and you add a second task, it always costs you something on the first task. Even just having the TV on as background noise? Yeah, studies show that homework is of lower quality when kids do it with the TV on. Now, music may be an exception, but the data there are mixed. Some studies show that listening to music is just fine.
And I'll quickly summarize. What basically is everything we suspected and we know about trying to get work done, and ourselves get work done. Even though kids are good at multitasking, as soon as they have a task that requires concentration, writing an essay, writing a paper, doing math homework, the reality is every distractor that is put beside them or in front of them draws away some degree of executive function away from the task at hand. So everything we say about it, quiet place, minimal distractions are best for task function. Something that's a bit of a novelty and yet a bit of a concern are the role-playing worlds, the virtual worlds that have grown up around us. Does anybody use Second Life here at all? Is that familiar? You do. Do you use it a bit, a lot, or?
Oh, no, I just checked it out.
Did you?
It's boring, so.
True. It is, for some people, yes, people with a full and rich social life, and a good family, I'm presuming, a good family life. Second Life, I'm going to show you a little clip of what Second Life is. And you can imagine now, granted, as adults, we have a different experience, but you can imagine a teenager for the first time, embarking on kind of adult life. We're not sure what adult life is all about. So Second Life is there to tell you what it's all about. Give you a second to load it. Now, let's see. Now, what you're seeing are avatars. You select a doll. That doll lives out your fantasies in the Second Life world. There are playgrounds, there are meetings. Every doll is a person in a computer somewhere who's in the same space as you. It's like a glorified chat room, but you've got a little doll, a persona, an avatar to act out your fantasies. You can be whatever you want. If you're small, you can be tall. If you're blonde, you can be black. If you're, you know, whatever you want, your avatar can do that. And apparently you can have virtual romance as well. Now, you can imagine, that could be pretty compelling for a child who was feeling at a loss in how to navigate the adult world. And you think, well, okay, that's fine, but that's a little bit beyond them. Well, hopefully there's nothing, there's something we have training wheels for virtual world, or training ground for virtual world. This one's called Habbo Hotel. I didn't even know about it. I was talking to my grade 6 classes about it in an internet safety talk the other day, and I said, well, none of you guys go to chat rooms. Well, sometimes we go to Habbo Hotel. What the heck is Habbo Hotel? Well, Habbo Hotel is a training ground for social networking in a virtual world. And in fact, it is, unlike, you know, it's not the suave and svelte looking characters that you saw in Second Life. These are kind of cute cartoon characters, like Sims characters. And you can go to this little world and navigate around with your Sims characters, and you can all meet and play little games and so on. But again, you're meeting in a virtual space, unsupervised. You're meeting people whom there's absolutely no connection with your family at all. There's a little bit of overt supervision, but certainly not enough to allay your fears about them meeting with inappropriate people. And then, of course, we've got the massive multiplayer online role-playing games, World of Warcraft, StarCraft, Call of Duty, all very, very compelling. And I've seen more bad language when yes, no, yes? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, when your kids, and those of you who may have young kids playing in some of these role-playing games, you may have very strict rules about the kinds of language they're allowed to use at home. But the minute they disappear in the gaming world, this is another language. And it is, yeah, unfortunately, the lowest common denominators dictating the words that are used. It reminds me, actually, I was in the military as a younger man, and back then we had military talk. I'm not allowed to say that in here. It was kind of offensive and rude. And then we had normal people talk, and that's, you just learn to not say military talk when you're at home. Social networking. So obviously, these are the sites where people meet online for a variety of reasons. Facebook, of course, for primarily social family connections. Epernicus. It's a social networking site for nerds, or scientists. Very handy, though. So if you're in a science specialty, though, you don't want to go to Facebook, but you want to go to a place where, if you're an oceanographer, a physicist, an ecologist, you can set up a network with others of your same discipline and spend time both socializing and working on research projects. LinkedIn, how many people here have LinkedIn? Yes? Oh yeah, okay, right on. Okay, yeah, same here. Very handy. And of course, Twitter again. Now, there he is, Marshall McLuhan. He's got a bit of a puzzled look on his face, and he says, interesting. So we've got this very pervasive internet with all of this connecting, but notice he points out Big Brother, and he's making a referral back, of course, to being monitored by the kind of powers that be. He saw a major concern in this, in that what we'd experience is a loss of privacy and personal information. And the difference is, we're conscious of that. We know what it's like to have a private life. Our kids don't. They presume, because they see people modeling this kind of open connection, that it's okay and that it's part of, it's normal. One of my colleagues happened to send me this. I think it's probably appropriate to show you. I just want to show you the first minute. You saw this one? What do you think? You didn't? Okay. This is very clever. Imagine going downtown somewhere with a book that says face on it. You are the Facebook people, and you're going to talk to people, strangers, and ask them to tell you about themselves. And your job is to ask probing personal questions, and how should they respond? So here, let's follow the action.
First of all, what's your name, address, and phone number?
That's because...
So, and again, I'll zip ahead, but basically they spend about half a day with their little books just asking personal questions, asking the same kind of questions that Facebook asks us, asks our kids. It's the kind of stuff you would never give away to a stranger in the street, and yet, for some reason, you're sitting at your personal computer, it's your computer, and you're typing on your screen, it gives you a sense of ownership, which doesn't exist. You are basically broadcasting to the world. Other concerns, inappropriate content and internet addiction. These two really struck me as quite powerful. Number one, self-injury YouTube videos. They're out there, and there's always that danger of imitation. And so we have to be very conscious that when kids can be exposed to inappropriate content, which can have quite unexpected results. Secondly, this is not a strange one. Spanish nun kicked out of convent for using Facebook too much. She was actually their blogger, but she was using Facebook too much, I guess. Now, Dr. Larry Rosen is a psychologist down in California who's been studying the impact of technology and the way children behave. His conclusion is that this generation of kids are different, largely because they do expect instant response. Not only from us, in other words, if you were downtown somewhere, they've got a cell phone, they email you, they text you, they expect something back. Not only that, they want it back from us, teachers, professors, right? Professors, wherever you are, I guess you're out there. They do expect that as well. They don't have any sense of delay. They don't know how to wait. They expect it. They should be like their older brothers and sisters, but they are not. So here we go, the digital sea. And I put that out as a sort of a visual metaphor because it's unknown territory. While we've got some, McLuhan and people like him saying, well, the world's sort of going to be like that, the reality is an uncharted territory. But for the kids, this is our role. Swim coaches and lifeguards. We're there to help guide them, give them the skills, but it's the world they'll be swimming in, not the world necessarily. We'll be there with them. So what are some basic facts on the digital lives of children? What are their presumptions? Number one, they get to make stuff. They're the authors. When they see content, they don't necessarily have these skills to discriminate. It's like in the old days when you read something in the paper, it had to be true. When you saw it on TV, it had to be true. When you read it on the internet, when you see it on the internet, it must be true. And that's all content. So you have to think about the ramifications there. Number two, everything happens in front of a vast, invisible, and anonymous audience. And once it's out there, it lasts for a long, long, long time. Everything that goes out stays out there and isn't retrievable. Or it can be brought back again. Number four, information, as was pointed out here, it's been democratized. That is, information is now ubiquitous, and it can be massaged and altered in any fashion. Kids expect to do that. And finally, this is the tricky one. And again, it's that personal space. It's my computer, it's my screen, it's my internet. I have ownership over it. So as a result, they feel like, because of that distance, it makes it a safe place for them to take risks. So, here we go. The digital world. We have to teach them how to be digital citizens. This is a different kind of citizenship, a different kind of adult relationship. And they don't necessarily have the ground rules, the grounding that we did to survive in a standard world. So here we go. Parents are going to come out here and go, that's it. I'm canceling the internet when I get home. No more. No. Then, that solves all the problems. There are times and place for it, right? There's a time to go away and unplug completely. But we've seen this before. And I want to give you a couple of reflections on some amazing pieces of technology that evolved thousands of years ago and caused great panic amongst the intellectuals. So Socrates, as quoted by Plato in his dialogues, this invention will create forgetfulness in the learner's souls because they will not use their memories. He's talking about writing. That was the invention of text. It was actually the Egyptian god of text complaining to one of the Greek gods, basically. Or the Greek god is complaining to the Egyptian god saying, look at this thing, you've invented text, and look what happens. People forget how to memorize. Then, Adrien Baillet, a French scholar, 1600s, bemoaning the collapse of scholarship because of books and printing. Because in the old days, only scholars wrote books, and scholars had control of information, and that ensured that it was scholarly, it was correct, it was accurate. And as he said, the world would collapse into a barbarous state that, just like that followed the collapse of the Roman Empire. And that was 1685. So just kind of at the tail end of the Renaissance, and he's saying, ooh, bad things are going to happen. 1930s, radio. So enthralled are kids in the radio that they are excited by it. They rush to listen to their radio plays. This is our parents, and in some cases our grandparents. And this was a scholarly study on the bad impact of radio on children and how it was going to impair their learning. We all know what happened. Certainly in our generation, I won't bother with the television. We all know how bad TV was for us. That's why we're the failures we are. But here we go. Still more fears. Oops, sorry. This is contemporary. This is right away. These are quotes pulled right off of the current net. Email hurts IQ. Twitter and Facebook harm moral values. Facebook could raise your risk of cancer. That's a curious one. Check the link afterwards and have a look. So here we go, at the tail end. Lots of risks, lots of changes. As Heather pointed out, we know kids' brains are thinking, their relationship to the world is changing, their expectation, how they relate to the world and themselves is changing. So we have a responsibility as parents, as teachers, as educators, and that is, numero uno, you must, if you give your child a computer, you must sit with them, watch what they do, have them take you there. Don't just leave them alone and let them go off and do it on their own. You do have to sit with them. And don't be judgmental. Just let them show you what they're doing first. And enjoy it. And if you're worried about something, show the concern you have. But at first, you're there to observe. Number two, you really need to identify the kinds of skills you think they need to practice. It's the obvious stuff. In social networking, you don't meet with people you don't know. You don't share information about yourself that you, the parents, the adults, don't approve of. You make sure they touch base with you and tell you what's going on. The other thing is, wherever possible, you as adults and we as teachers need to ensure that what we get the kids to do with this amazingly powerful technology actually is constructive. So if you've got an iPhone for the child and you've got Google Earth on it, get into something that maybe uses the GPS function. Get them to show you navigation functions. Get them to use it in a practical way that helps make your daily lives more effective. And finally, educate yourselves, because there's no one solution. There's lots. Heather and I have pulled together about 6, certainly more in the package, but 6 great resources that are a good starting point for you, the parents, on how to raise good digital citizens. So that's the formal part of the presentation. And
most of those websites should be in your package at the bottom of the resources page. But what isn't there will be the digitalcitizenship.net. So you may want to add that one.
Right. Outstanding site, by the way. And this particular site, Digital Citizenship, has been put together by the industry itself. I mean, it's a curious one because they're promoting the internet as a resource, a shared resource amongst us all, but they too are concerned about the fact that the resource be used well and appropriately, because they're parents as well. They worry about it.
So can we just take if there are any questions, we're not guaranteed that we'll know the answers, or any ideas that you want to share together as parents in terms of how you act as the lifeguards and coaches in this digital sea that George has us swimming in. Any questions or comments that you might want to make tonight? Yeah.
Our child is at school in the junior school.
Right.
I'm curious, how do you manage the technology and access to this technology at the middle and high school levels?
Okay. First of all, content-wise, we have content controlling software. So we actually have, if you like, filters, active filtering systems in place to prevent accidental access or even intentional access to inappropriate content. Pretty good. I've been really pleased with it. So that sort of looks after the content side of things for the most part. We obviously have acceptable use that we teach all the students, acceptable use policies in AUP that's in place. And we always do very active internet safety introductory sessions at the beginning of every year. In fact, every year, and the kids, it's, oh, here we go again, another internet safety lecture. But we are constantly putting in there because, and as I said earlier, the kids do have a sense of ownership over the medium, and so for some strange reason, they have a sense of autonomy which is far greater than that which they'd have in a face-to-face situation. So, and then other than that, a little minor change. We do have laptops in the classroom, so they move back and forth depending on what the needs are for the classroom. So there's more, let's say, informal access available for them.
We talked a bit as a management team about sort of policies and procedures and things, and what we know is this is a bit of a moving target. And so we're forever revisiting and talking about, well, what should the guidelines be? How do we want to do this? What if kids brought their own technology? Like all of those sorts of things, right? And so the key, we feel, I think, is that we're trying to keep on top of this and learn together, but also dialogue with our kids and that sort of thing. So it is a bit of a moving target.
I think the most important thing for you to consider as parents is that you really need to be engaged with your kids and connecting with them as they connect with the technology, because as we all did when we grew up, they're going to take risks, they're going to take chances, not major, it depends on the child, but it's important that they do it with you as much as possible and that you show interest and be there, but you can't necessarily shut it off. It is part of the world they're going to live in, but it's just accompanying them on the journey.
Just as a mom of teens, what I'm finding is that I want to engage with my kids, and they're texting, they're on Skype, whatever, and so I'm trying to treat the technology like it's a real person, right? Oh, who are you chatting with now? How's that going? What's happening for them? You know, as if they're there. Or, you know, when I hear my kids in their room on Skype, I might knock on the door and just poke my head in and say, how's it going? You okay? Oh, can I come in and say hello to whoever, right? Because they're sitting there on the screen. And not invasively, but just to make us all conscious that this is a real live relationship going on, whether it's coming from the computer or the phone. And as much as I'm their mom, I want to know about this stuff and, you know, not pry, but just be a presence. And that's a tricky line to walk. I'm not sure I've managed it, but my 19-year-old son talking to this girl on Skype, knock, knock, hi, how's it going? Oh, hi, Lindsay, I don't know how well that went over, but I just want my son to know that he can't disappear into this, that we'll continue to all talk about this, and this is a real person and a real relationship. So but I don't know, how do some of you, does anybody have just a couple of minutes or suggestions or ideas for the rest of us in terms of managing this sea? Or you've all just been sitting so quietly and you want to go home? Okay. At the very, oh, yes? Yeah.
I sort of, when I'm dealing with this, and we've had some good conversations about Twitter and that, I feel like that old guy that used to complain about, those young whippersnappers running down the street, banging a stick on the fence or whatever.
Yeah.
Because when you're talking about, the Socrates said, well, writing is going to be a problem. When we learned how to write, it didn't change our frontal cortex. When we started reading books, it didn't change our brain. And so, we talk about on a day-to-day experience that, wow, I'm running 1,000,000 miles an hour. I got to go do some yoga to relax. I really feel grounded. And we always seem to come back to this point where we have to still our brain. And what our kids are doing are getting their brains going faster and faster. So where I'm that old guy sitting on that porch going, wow, this is really scary. My kids' brains are developing, and all the synapses are forming. And I'm wondering, the biggest single question to me is, okay, this is all happening. I understand I've got to be supportive and be an intellectual parent. What's their brain going to be like when they're 30? And that's something that is a huge concern to me, because the impact of it's just like we know that if someone's doing drugs at 12, it's different than someone doing it at a 20-year-old brain.
Yeah.
You've raised a very good point.
There's going to be connections that are going to be different from what we had. And what are we going to look like in 30 years?
Can I respond?
The world's
to
going to
that?
look different, yep.
We were addressing that in a staff meeting not long ago, and it all relates back to the development of delayed gratification and the ability to postpone reward through effort. In other words, you work at something, and reward comes to you at the end of it. Whereas what you're referring to, and you're right, it is a bit of a problem with especially gaming, video gaming, because it's such an instantaneous feedback stimulus mechanism. It's engaging the limbic system in a very powerful way. And some are more susceptible than others. And so as a parent, that's where you go, oh, you know what, I see, this is a problem for you, so we need to develop self-control. And that's the trick. You can't, if you put a barrier up and say, right then, nothing for you, then a child may try to evade it. Whereas if you go, there's a motivator here, but now we have to demonstrate control. We have to learn control. So there becomes an obligation for us, and I had the same issue with my own son, who was quite an avid gamer. And we had to make very concrete rules and make the child realize why the rules were in place. It's a challenge, though, because, of course, their limbic systems are busy going, pleasure, 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 and you're going, well, hang on a second. You've got to back away from it. Taking them away, and the other one is finding other stimuli that can also give them that same type of reward.
And modeling the reflective times in between as
that
well.
part I understand, and I'm dealing with that with my boy right now, as you know, and that part I understand, and that's good parenting, being attentive and all those things, and earning your time and everything. What I'm talking about is the actual change of the structure of the brains. Physical, not just my boy, but everybody. If you're continually bombarded, and described it, like I say, the frontal part of the brain, if that's going to be changed, what's this leading? Yeah.
We've got a couple of other questions which we'll answer in a second, but I also just want to point out, because I know some of you have to scoot out and I don't want to hold you here, so to speak. The back page of the handout is a feedback form. I'm looking for feedback or input about how things have gone this year and anything you might like to see or be interested in for next year. It's great to have parents wanting to come out, and I want to make sure that we continue to create places that support the areas of learning that you want or need. So I just want you to be aware of that and hopefully fill that in and leave it on the table. And then Liam, you had a question and you had a question.
I just wanted to say about video games that you were talking about, how it's instant gratification based on how fast it moves. So I'm not quite sure that's completely accurate, and that some games are built to be as challenging as possible. Like some of them are actually really, it takes some problem solving ability. Like you actually have to think about what you're doing. You have to try, you have to fail, you have to try something else. Like it's not completely like you're just going at it blind. Like you actually do have to make decisions.
I know what you're referring to, because I've struggled my way through Call of Duty and StarCraft and Warcraft and I can see that what you're referring to is a very specific type of problem solving, especially collaborative gaming, where you've got 4 or 5 people in the same environment and you have to assemble a team. But that type of time compression is not very realistic. That's the difference. This is like being an air traffic controller where you've got 20 airplanes all landing simultaneously. And you there, you there, you there, you there. It's all. In reality, an air traffic controller has a lot more time to regulate that degree of interaction. So just be wary. I know what you're referring to, and it's incredibly, it's amazing to watch. It's like watching a team of stockbrokers at their peak, trading, buy, sell, 20 stocks on the go. So that is a very valuable form of task switching, but it does come at a penalty. It does come at a cost, that's all.
I'm not really talking about actually the Call of Duty thing that you're talking about.
Okay.
Not that you try again instantly after you do it. I'm talking about different games. This is a long time ago, but The Legend of Zelda.
Oh yeah, sure, yeah.
Hours.
Yeah.
Yes. A specific part. Trying to figure out how to do it, and just trying over and over again, and it's not as I don't think it's quite as compressed as you.
Quite right. Myst. Do you remember Myst? Any of you guys ever play Myst? Yes? Yeah, there you go. Exactly. Sure. Beautiful.
And as a teacher, I want to know what it is that keeps you coming back and trying over and over and over again in a video game. I mean, you don't need to answer that right now, but that's the thing that goes through my mind as an educator. Okay, what is it that keeps kids engaged, and how can we recreate that? Okay, we'll have a final sort of question. And
one thing that keeps them from the feedback I'm getting is you can't fail. People who make the games want you to keep playing, and so if you do something and it isn't what you intended to do, okay, then shift gears, and the story still unfolds, and you still are continuing to play, because they don't want you to have failed, and that is so different from some of the experiences they often have in their day-to-day life, that it's tremendously compelling to be in a situation where, sure, you shift gears, but you never fail. The other thing I was going to say before about the changes to the brains is there's something else going on which may be changing the brains, but is certainly changing the way we think, and that is moving from very linear thinking and very categorized thinking to systems thinking. There was a really good talk last week here about systems thinking.
Yes.
Websites are focusing on connections rather than a linear type of, and even the idea of how you think about categories, that you have to shelf a book physically in one place and only one place in the library. With computers, it's everywhere. And as the screenagers are growing up in a world where everything is connected to everything else, whereas I grew up in a world where you had to make a decision. It was either this or that.
That's a good
which
point.
has had devastating effects, for instance, in medical diagnosis.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And so I see that as
Yeah.
a very positive potential impact on the way that the brain
The
is
connections.
changing. If we are allowed to look at all the connections in the brain rather than being asked from the moment we're born to start excluding everything
Sure.
but one.
Yeah, that's great. Well, and when you said the correction, I was thinking Xavier and I were at a workshop and we were driving somewhere with GPS, another form of technology, right? And you miss your turn and it just goes correcting. Now it has a new way of going. And we were talking about, isn't it great to be in a car that doesn't say you made a wrong turn? It's just, we're correcting, we're going, oh, this is great. Anyway, I want to thank you all very much for your time tonight. I really do use and take to heart the feedback. So please, if you can just spare a minute or two to jot a dot point down there, that would be awesome. And we won't have another one before the summer, so enjoy the holiday, and hopefully we'll reconnect again in the fall. So thank you very much for your time tonight.